We are live. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Got the green on for St. Patrick's Day. It is March 17th, 2023. I believe this is number 55, double nickel Michael Jordan game of Palantir Weekly. You know what I'm talking about? Double nickel. You get the reference?
No, it's over my head. I just buy the shoes.
No, it's when you put up 55 points at the Garden. Double nickel, 2-5. And, we got to celebrate because it's the 55th episode. And what better way to celebrate than to ring in the celebration? Welcome to Palantir Weekly.
Dude, next time I see him, I'm going to grab that fucking bell and throw it into the Hudson, dude. It's going to be a cowbell going down the Hudson.
Me and Chris and I actually started a podcast called Late Night Stock Talks. So me and Chris have seen a lot of each other this week, and he's seen a lot of the bell every single day. And
Hot Boy Weekly.
Hot Boy Weekly. That's what we should call it, Hot Boy Weekly. And Matt is back. He is a free agent when it comes to the podcasting world, and he was his price went up. That's why last week we couldn't get him back on the pod. He's like, nope, I have an agent. You got to go through these people now.
I couldn't pay him enough. Is what he's saying.
I had to literally talk to his people. I was like, you have people now? He's like, I have people. I'm very valuable. A lot of podcasts want to book me. And let's just say I got in contact.
Wait, is that true? Have I been doing this for free for this long?
Yeah.
Do I need an agent?
You own this. This is your idea. Let's not forget. You have equity in this. Matt doesn't have equity. So
I don't have shit. I just come in for the smiles and the good-looking brown men. That's what I'm here for.
See,
Come
the
on,
thing
man.
is, the thing is, I'm going to put you on the spot right now, Matt, and you're not going to like this, but I'm going to have to do it. I want you to be a regular, but I know you have a little bit more of a life than me and Chris. So I don't want to assume every weekend that you're
I have
definitely
a life
down.
too, man. I just
Chris, you've been doing this for 55
around.
weeks. You have no life if you're doing this.
Even the weeks that I'm not, I'm like, even the weeks that I haven't been on here, which is probably like 3 out of the past, I don't know, maybe like 10.
I think it's more than 3.
Well, either way, most of the time I'm still in the chat. I'm just too lazy.
Exactly.
It
I
takes
feel
a lot to get this done up. Okay.
No, I know. Look. People think we just hear and we talk about Palantir. We actually have to be intellectually ready, and it's 11 p.m. We're tired, all that shit. So, I'm gonna assume you're a regular now, and until you tell me on Fridays you can't make it, I'm assuming you're a regular, and so you're official.
Well, we're on the same page. I always assume.
Okay, good. No, I just don't want you because I know sometimes you are
we're
busy.
full tonight, and then I'm like, okay, I'll just jump off this 25th floor balcony. Sorry, it's too.
He's
at 69. That would have been better if
he's flexing on us. 25th floor, just on the top. It doesn't matter.
Don't do it. If you think I'm flexing, I'll tell you, it wears off within the first couple weeks after all the elevators you have to ride.
Yeah.
25 is cool though, bro. Just like waking up in the morning, drinking some coffee, looking at that view, you're like, fuck, I'm doing something with my life, It's like,
That's not bad.
Simple. All right. We got some Palantir news to get into. We're 3 minutes into the pod. Let's take the next 5 minutes to just do a little recap of what's going on in the market. And then we'll get into all the Palantir news. So let's start with you, Matt. What do you think's going on? We had the market rip a little bit, then it came down, then it went back up. You got Nvidia at 260, doesn't really make sense, but you got the 10-year going down below 4. Now it's at like 3.68 or something. Are you bullish? Or you got cash in the market? You got cash on the side? What are you doing?
I did just get a bonus, so I'm just holding on to that. I'm still trying to decide.
Yo, the flexing is not stopping today. This is like a St. Patty's flex. It's just like
I'm transparent, man. I'm sorry.
It was a good bonus. It was a decent bonus.
Not as good as I wanted it to be, but it was still better than what I can't complain, but I am going to complain because it was a little less than I wanted it to be. But
so
still,
Matt's moving to the 30th floor now. That's what's happening.
No, I think I might. I was the reason bringing it up is I might buy a personal residence this year. We'll see. But anyway,
wait, you mean a house, motherfucker? Did you say personal residence?
Personal residence.
That's a flex. That's a flex.
Bro, it's a house. Did you just call it a personal? I've never heard someone say I will be purchasing a personal residence.
Oh my god. Well, I have investment property before I even bought a house.
That's like saying I don't have a girlfriend. I have a significant other. It's like shut the fuck up. It's your girlfriend, motherfucker.
Or so I have some cash. But anyway, going back to the market aspect of things, I'm just getting roasted today. The market aspect of things, I think that we're at the beginning of the end for where things are really going to get tough. Whether or not it gets really worse from here, I'm kind of skeptical. But the thing that I will say surprised me is I never really thought the mark-to-market accounting would really impact the banks as it has. So I'll just be point blank on that. I wouldn't expect, because when I think about personally buying a bond, right? Say I buy a 6-month or a 2-year bond. I don't think about the mark-to-market aspect of it because I just assume, okay, in 6 months, I'm going to get this much money back, or 2 years, I'm going to get this much money back. Versus when you're looking at, say, the Amazons of the world or the SVBs of the world, you have to look at, okay, well, Rivian's down, $10 billion on my position this particular quarter. So you have to write that on the financial statement. Same thing with SVB. So the fact that I wasn't really paying attention to that, I would say was a surprise to me. But to me, I think that with everything that the Fed is doing to help shore up liquidity, which all it really is, right? Because a lot of these guys aren't investing in 10 years and 30 years. They're investing in 6-month or what have you sort of bonds. The liquidity and the access to that, if it's not, two things could go. It's either not going to be enough, which will turn the market sideways. My hope is that it doesn't get abused. If it gets abused, either way, that's bullish for stocks also. But regardless, I think this is the beginning of the end of the turmoil that we've been seeing in all 2022 to now. And I feel like we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is probably early 2024, where things really start to get positive again.
Okay, Chris, you concur with that?
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. I think the rate rise regime might be in a little bit of trouble. I think we are likely to see some cuts sooner rather than later, because now you can see that this is becoming a systemic issue. So the Fed's intention was to control inflation by raising rates. The thing is, though, they did it at such a pace that some of these banks, I mean, honest to God, it's just really bad in terms of risk management on their part, because you can see that inflation is climbing, and the Fed said they're going to do everything in their power to raise rates. The minute you heard that, you should have been cutting back on your dividend and whatever, and at the same time started buying as many hedges as you possibly could. So SVB is just poorly managed from a risk standpoint. And I think, because of this systemic risk, the likelihood that we're going to see rate rises that are accelerant to what they were before, like 50s and 75s, it's not going to happen. So I think we go back to 25 for the next one, and then they wait for more data. All the data that I'm starting to see is pointing towards a very deflationary market. So Matt could probably talked about this a little bit. Like oil and natural gas are huge drivers of the economy. They've gone down significantly compared to what they were last year. Also, like commodities, fundamental companies that you need to build out things like lumber and stuff, they're all down like crazy from last year. So I think inflation has been pretty much licked. It's not necessarily in the data yet. It's not going to show up in the data. Majority of it is because one of the areas that's holding up really well is real estate. Like real estate right now is still high compared to what it should be. But from an affordability standpoint, this is one of those things that just corrects itself, right? Where if prices go too high and people can't afford it, supply and demand eventually kicks in and start to go down. I have been hearing some data points from some people that there was a huge boom in Airbnbs like the last couple of years. So a lot of people bought Airbnb properties, so they turned their homes into rentals. And that sucked a lot of inventory out of the market for people wanting to own. So I'm seeing also, even in the rental market, where a lot of companies bought properties thinking that they were going to successfully rent them for a good period of time. The problem is that equation's not necessarily working as well as they had originally hoped. So some of these companies are likely to unload these properties. The thing with investing in investment properties is that they're not going to get like 30-year fixed on a property as collateral. That doesn't happen. They usually get 5-10 year, corporate debt that they could use to buy it. So a lot of cash buyers that we saw were corporations buying the companies, buying the houses and renting them out. But the equation in the rental market may not work, and we might see some domino effects of that too. So I don't know. I think housing right now is the area that I'd watch out for, and there's no interest in keeping house prices stable right now. Everyone wants prices to come down because, like I said, there's an affordability crisis, an entire generation of people having to rent homes instead of buying homes. So and so I think from a legislative standpoint, they have to take action on housing to get it under control a little bit. Because I mean, dude, if you need to work 3 jobs to afford a home, that's bad. So
I do want to bring up something that you brought up in your podcast last night, though, Chris, which is 8 months or 9 months without a chief risk officer, right? At SVB. I mean, like, can you imagine? That'd be like one of the oil company I work for not having a safety head for several months to a year, right? Like, that's just unheard of, and that just shows complete lack of financial responsibility on the behalf of the bank's part. So I don't think at least I hope all banks aren't as carefree as SVB was with that. And I think that most people have good models set up to see when things are too much of a risk on the books, right? Just remember that part where they have margin call in the movie where they're like, okay, well, what if the bonds fail this much, that much? I'm hoping that all these banks have really good models like that to say, hey, if interest rates go to 7%, are we still solvent? Are we still good? And I'm hoping that nobody's sitting there being like, oh crap, we need to do some swaps because this is not bueno on a mark-to-market sense.
Speaking of carefree, we're going to get into some Palantir news now. This is some of the biggest news of the week that came out today. I don't know if you guys saw this today, but when I saw this, I was just like, wow, this is incredibly interesting. So an article came out, Foxglove, the people that were supposed to debate Palantir, Open Democracy investigation has found that every hospital in England has been told to put patient data into Palantir this month. This is a clear breach of the government's promise to not extend Palantir's NHS's role without talking to the public. If you actually go to the article right here, this was incredibly interesting. So again, American spy tech company, billionaire Trump donor, blah, 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 blah. Then we get to this. In a letter sent last month, the Health Service Finance Chief Julian Kelly gave NHS trusts until the end of March to begin uploading patient information to a new central database that uses Palantir's Foundry software. The instruction came despite a government pledge about not choosing someone without talking to the public. This paragraph right here, I mean, it looks like we got the deal. A new central database. They have till the end of March for every single hospital in England to start loading up all that data and going through a digital transformation into what seems like Palantir's ontology. What are your guys' thoughts when you see this? And I mean, have we kind of won the battle when it comes to this NHS deal?
I'm not 100% sold on it, to be honest with you, but it looks encouraging. Definitely looks encouraging.
Well, what's there not to sell you on? I mean, I don't see how there's no way we don't get this deal.
I mean, the thing that bothers me, like, you could already tell what side this person is on by the writing of it, right?
Yeah,
confidential medical records, spy company, American. It's written on the people that are against Palantir, and maybe it's trying to incite fear to put more anger into the deal. But to me, that's even for somebody that is against the deal, looking from the other perspective, it would be far-fetched of me to be like, look, they're already inputting more data into Palantir, right? Like, I don't think that they would make that up. So to me, it's encouraging, but for some reason, I've just grown more skeptical with my age at the same time. So, but I'm encouraged, but also skeptical because who wrote it, right?
Yeah, and I think we're getting the deal. I mean, like, the way this looks like, if Foxglove themselves is, I mean, the reason Foxglove is reporting this from their angle, they don't want Palantir to get the deal, or at least they don't want there to be a deal without any type of public discourse about it, which is why the debate was going to happen. I had kind of made a prediction a couple weeks ago that was like, look, the reason they pulled out of this debate is because they know they're getting this deal. Why the hell would you throw yourself into a ring when you already won the match? And so if every hospital that Foxglove is reporting, this is not like some other, this is the outlet that shouldn't be reporting good news for Palantir, is reporting good news in the view of shareholders, that every hospital now has to load up patient data. I think this deal is done. I think we get this deal. And it seems very unlikely that this consortium of other companies is able to get the deal because the NHS knows they can't waste more money. And $580 million over 5 years, that's $100 million more in revenue just this year alone. Might have a chance for.
Don't get me excited like that.
I mean, look, that's $100 million right off of one deal, just for this year in terms of revenue. And I don't know if they took that into an equation when they did their estimations for 2.2 billion or whatever, but
I see it being much longer term than that. I see the immediate return of the 100-some million a year for 5 years, but I see that breaking into a country like the United Kingdom and their health system,
huge,
and being able to show that, hey, we tried it out and hey, we're signing on long term, I think has bigger implications for not just the healthcare system of the EU, but also the United States as a whole, as we've seen partnerships kind of showing up. And I think that in itself is at least a $1 billion a year, if not $2 billion a year business, not the specific NHS deal, but the healthcare portion of keeping data safe.
If it works in the UK, what if it works in all other parts of the EU that have socialized healthcare services?
Yeah. But the thing that bothers me about Foxconn is it's like they've obviously done no due diligence about how safe Palantir is about keeping data. Like anytime I'm at work, I don't have access to, like, I couldn't go start looking in, I think, Azerbaijan's data, or I can't say too many actually because might reveal too much, but I can't look at other regions' data, right? I have to either apply or get allowed to be able to visualize that data before I'm actually able to start looking at it. So, anyway,
Chris, your thoughts on the deal?
Yeah, I think it's a positive sign. I mean, they have been making a lot of inroads into multiple healthcare organizations, and so there is a lot of complexity in healthcare organizations, but there's also a lot of money there too. So if they can break into multiple healthcare organizations, and NHS being one of the most prominent ones, then that means that their growth trajectory in just that sector is probably going to be pretty big for the next 5, 10, 15 years. Because what's going to happen is the same thing that happened with a lot of software, where one system adopts it and then a counterparty adopts it and then another one adopts it and then it becomes an industry standard and then everyone adopts it. So yeah, I think they are definitely heading in the right direction. This is another positive step. I hope they get it. I really do. I do want to say that the vitriol behind like Palantir is starting to kind of like, what's the word, diminish a little bit, because how many times can you say spyware company before people on the other side get tired and say, wait, isn't that the same company right now that's supporting Ukraine? So from a PR perspective, Foxglove is probably a Russian disinformation campaign company right now. 100%. I mean, that's what you could equate it to, right? They're basically aligned with the Russians. So I don't understand why why you would want to share the same talking points as a Russian what is that thing called? A Russian disinformation campaign.
Chris, can you speak? You're in the healthcare sector. Can you speak to the implications and maybe expand on it, as Matt was saying, of if they get the deal and let's say 2 years in, they have completely transformed the NHS. Like, this shit is working. What is like a bull case on what that means financially in other areas that could serve as a case study for them to expand?
I mean, the biggest thing is the wide breadth of the NHS. You're talking about a national healthcare system with hundreds of hospitals and clinics and all this other stuff. So if they can do that at the NHS, they can do it. You know how they say with New York, like if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Well, if you can make it at the NHS, you can make it anywhere, because that means that they have the ability to scale out. They're not limited to trying to figure things out at a single hospital or even a small region, because what's happening is there is a lot of consolidation in healthcare organizations, where back in the day you had like a lot of like hospitals, but they were like one-off hospitals here, one-off hospitals there. Now you just got giant networks, and each network has a huge level of complexity that comes with it. So you have to like manage it. Like for us in Jersey, like UMDNJ, right? For you guys, like in New York, we've got NYU, we've got Mount Sinai. These are like organizations that have multiple hospitals all around. Then there's another one in New York called Northwell. Northwell owns like, I think almost like a third of all the hospitals in the New York City area. So if you go to a hospital in New York City, you're probably at a Northwell facility. So these are the kinds of things that end up like, then these are going to be big contract deals. Like I'm not talking about like a few $1 million. This is like 10, 20, maybe even $50 million a year deal if it comes through, depending on the size of the organization that they end up partnering with. So
this is really, really exciting because I mean, like, let's say they get the $500 million deal, and let's say the stock tanks that day because the stock always like that's irrelevant to me. What's more, and I would expect that to happen. What's more relevant to me is 2 years from now, we're in 2025, 2026. If they've partnered with the NHS and they reduced backlogs in Chelsea and Westminster by 28%, they did the COVID vaccine distribution. Imagine that's like 60% of backlogs are gone. Imagine people in the UK, which Palantir has their biggest office in. Palantir is like a household name. Like it has to be a household name, right? If every citizen in the UK is using a hospital and their data is being associated with the software that they're using, I mean, everyone knows about it.
Well, no, unfortunately, Palantir has the same problem as Salesforce when it comes to that. Like, you are not going to be a household name. You just do everything in the back end. Only the people in the know will really know what Palantir is. Like, if you're talking about just like a regular person off the street, they're not going to say, oh my God, Palantir has my data. No, they're going to still see the NHS as their primary thing. It's just all the back end stuff that's being
You don't think there would be any
Palantir.
increased brand recognition for more people just to know? No. You don't think that's going to happen?
No, like go ask a normal person on the side in the street right now. What does Salesforce do? 99% of people don't even know that they've interacted with someone on the other end who's using Salesforce. But
yeah,
that's how SaaS works. This is not a consumer application where people log into a consumer portal where you're going to see the name like right on the screen. Like when you go to Google, you're going to see Google, you're going to see Microsoft.
You think that could exist? People could log in and see their health data through a Palantir portal?
No,
via the NHS?
There's already multiple things that
there's companies that do that. Okay, I'm just spitballing.
Yeah. It's more that all the back end data, everything is managed correctly from a billing standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, from a workflow standpoint, from a visualization standpoint. So organizations can make better decisions on how they operate. So I think this is more, like I said, this is a very sad. I would say look at Salesforce. Salesforce is the best example of the trajectory to which Palantir is likely to rise. So I would say, we've got probably 10 years of nice steady growth. And I think that's sustainable, right? Like you want 10-20% year over year growth compounding on itself, because that's what's going to make you an ultimate winner.
I agree. It's just if they solve the NHS's problem, as you were saying, if other countries start adopting them, that's not 10-20% year over year. That's like that ramps up.
And that gives me a question. I mean, the NHS, is that a UK or is that an England based company?
The NHS is the National Health Service for the UK. So they're national.
That's government.
So that's Scotland, England, and who else?
Wales. Yeah. Wales, Northern Ireland. Yeah.
See, I didn't even know all that. All I know is it's the UK. I'm not that educated on that area, but it's a lot of people. It's I think over 20 million people. And it's a big problem.
Germany. Yeah, it's probably 30 million.
30 million. Yeah.
Wait, 30 million. What? Wait,
people, do you know how many people live in the UK?
100 million, dude.
Really?
That's a lot of people.
No, it's 67 million, 67.3.
67 million. Okay. Yeah.
Damn, bro. Wait, they're managing. Wait, and all of these people, correct me if I'm wrong, they have no private insurance, correct? All 67 million.
You can have private insurance on the side, but they're primarily covered. Yeah, primarily covered by NHS.
But most of them by right. So
yes.
Let's say 50 million people are being covered, our Palantir is doing the back end data. That's a lot of shit to do, and that's complex, and no wonder they failed for the past 10 years. Wow. Yeah, man, getting this deal is going to be a very big deal. It's going to be a very big deal as we go forward. All right, we've got some interview clips to react to because our boy Karp went on Fox Business with our boy Joe Lonsdale, and we got two clips I want to react to, and then we'll get some thoughts on it.
Run by AI, they're going to have every large institution in the world is going to have functions that can be run by AI, functions that can't be run by AI. They're going to have the taxonomy of where the data went, how it went. So if you're in a hospital, for example, there are things that only a doctor should decide. But then there are lots and lots of things that an algorithm can decide. But when how do you decide who decided what, under what conditions, and verify that the doctor only decided what he's allowed to decide? So decisions of life and death. Every large institution in the world is going to have functions that can be the thing that scares our adversaries the most, more than anything else, is the innovation in the American tech scene. So if you're Russia or China, you think about the missiles and other things we build, but what keeps you up at night are the kind of software products that we provide, that other companies provide.
Right.
And those are the things we have to be invested in, and they come largely out of Silicon Valley.
Okay, so Karp was talking about why they left Silicon Valley, why the Silicon Valley Bank is primarily in trouble, why a lot of startups are in trouble because of kind of the monoculture that exists in Silicon Valley. And ultimately, at the end, he made this really amazing analogy behind the first 50 years of Silicon Valley in tech innovation was to help the military. Like objectively, all the companies that were there, they were servicing the government. And then they took the things that worked in the government and they brought those to the consumer internet marketplace, which has created trillions of dollars of value. Palantir decided that a lot of the consumer internet stuff, even though it's been valuable, it's been a menace to society. All it's been doing is trying to capture people's attention and sell advertising. And so they wanted to go back to the roots of Silicon Valley with tech innovation. And the example he gives is when you build a kill chain for on the battlefield to be able to target and effectively hurt an adversary. When you can bring that to a hospital and actually apply the same mechanisms of AI and decision-making and data-driven insights that you use on the battlefield to a hospital where it is also a question of life or death, that is real innovation. That's not selling ads. That's actually protecting people and making things better and should be financially rewarded for that. How did you guys feel about Karp's thoughts on the interview writ large?
I'd say I agree with it. I think he's going after the right market segment. The question is, what does that growth trajectory look like? And how do you scale for that? That's the question. And I think that's the question that I think a lot of people are going to have to answer in the next 5-6 years with regards to Palantir. Some of the routes that I'm hearing, which is good, which is the SI route, which is getting system integrators to do the job for you. But yeah, Palantir is going to need to scale up significantly because it's going to have to train people to use the software and everything else, implement everything, and get to a point where they're able to like go into multiple organizations. See, the thing is, Palantir is not a drop and deploy kind of software solution. Like you really need to get in there, figure everything out, deploy it, and then after that you have a nice steady like experience. But it's not just a drag and drop thing. So yeah, I just think this is going to be a slower growth path which means that just hold on to your shares and just meaningfully add DCA. I think this is one of those companies that's actually worth DCAing into for the next 10 years. And
Chris, maybe you should take your own advice.
I told my wife is doing it. I'm not, but my wife is. I just see other opportunities where I can make more money at the short term. But yeah, DCAing is actually the best way to play this company, in my opinion.
Matt, your thoughts on the Karp interview?
Yeah, I think he hits it, and I think from a deployment perspective, I think you hit it right there, Chris. It's going to require a lot of trust in the organization because you think about it, it's not something that is as simple as, hey, here's Microsoft Excel, here's Microsoft PowerPoint, there you go. It's sitting with the people themselves and the organizations that are trying to automate these decisions and say, what are the right decisions, right? We can program something to say if it hits this sort of alert that it can close something, it close a valve or close or divert this over to here to make sure that things don't go wrong. But when it comes to the big decisions, that requires somebody else's intervention, right? Whether it's an engineer, doctor, or what have you. And that requires a lot of hand-holding, right? And I don't mean that in a bad manner. I just mean that requires a lot of due diligence to make sure that you're making the right decisions by, inserting this kind of logic into the artificial intelligence that you're kind of putting at bay. But I think another piece is it provides a lot of power, but regardless, it requires your technology within your organization. Sorry, the digital departments within your organizations, which have, let's just be honest, most likely failed at their goal over the past 10 years to really give up the reins to Palantir. And whether or not they have a big ego or not is really going to be what causes it'll eventually happen, right? So like in 20 years, I say that Palantir will be in most of these organizations. But in the short term, you're going to have all these egotistical maniacs thinking, no, I'm the CTO. I know what's best for my company. Palantir can't tell me what I needed or can't do. When in reality, it's not something to say that your egos, like, or like, how do I say it? That you're not competent or anything. It's just you're not approaching it the right way, and Palantir could truly help. So anyway,
here's why I think the Silicon Valley Bank thing is it is explicitly intertwined with everything Karp has been saying. Karp, for the past really couple years, he's been saying why they left Silicon Valley, because you've got all these startups that aren't doing anything for the world. You've got companies that are valued at $13.3 billion that raised $300 million in a Series C fundraising in April of 2021 that legitimately make money off people trading a picture of a monkey with other people. Talking about OpenSea, right? These were the companies in 2021 that were getting funded. And I think now it's starting to make a lot more sense. Well, why were they getting funded? Because the monoculture in Silicon Valley said, instead of focusing on innovation, let's focus on, for lack of a better word, bullshit. And let's fund these $300 million. Let's put into that company. Well, what does OpenSea do? They take their $300 million and they drop it into Silicon Valley Bank, which is the partner of all these startups that aren't doing anything. And I'm exaggerating when I say none of these startups, do anything important, but you get the point. And then Silicon Valley Bank, because there's so much greed and fluff in the system, they're like, well, we're going to put this money in all these mortgage-backed securities, and we're not going to have any risk management. And the fact that Palantir left Silicon Valley and they didn't have any money in that bank kind of proves the thesis that they left a place that they felt was becoming a monoculture that wasn't actually innovating. They went somewhere else. They took all their money with them, the $2.5 billion they had, and they didn't have to get caught up in any of this mess because of that exact reason for why they left. Too much greed, too much fluff in the system, not actual innovation. And they've got $1.5 billion in treasuries printing $100 million a year now.
So I'm going to disagree. I'm going to disagree with you for one reason. Silicon Valley definitely has pockets of, this, what you're talking about is culture of just monetizing users, and that's it. But that's not the only thing a lot of companies in Silicon Valley do. There's a lot, like 3D printing companies that are out there that have discovered tremendous amounts of value in doing things. You've got literally companies that are putting rockets and people into space right now. All of that is born out of the technology from Silicon Valley. You also have chip designs that are just outpacing anything that you could have thought of. A EUV lithography machine designing. Like, there are so many things that Silicon Valley does outside of it. Yeah, we may see the consumer ones because those are the most prominent, but Silicon Valley still has a lot of innovative companies.
I agree with you, but the problem is Andreessen Horowitz, one of the biggest venture capital funds, raised $4.3 billion to invest in crypto, which all those companies have turned out
in the grand.
Every single company has turned out to be a Ponzi scheme.
Axie, but in the grand scheme,
they're investing. My point is the $300 million that went into OpenSea, that could have gone into all the innovative stuff you're talking about, the stuff that matters, but it went into trading JPEGs. At some level, as a American society that is responsible for building tech companies, because no other parts of the world do it like we do it, we've got to look at ourselves and be like, this is ridiculous. Like, how did we let this happen?
But this isn't a unique problem, though, right? I think
this is an incredibly unique problem.
I don't think so. It's happened before. People were trading tulips and they busted, right? I mean, it's when you have irrational exuberance that you truly start to see where the real value lies. And I agree a lot with what Chris is saying is, while there's a lot of what you're talking about, Amit, which I agree with both of you, right? So both of you are right? I don't want to say, I'm choosing sides here. Not that it's important, but I see a lot of people that are chasing the bag, trying to be the greatest unicorn. And then I see a lot of people like Elon saying, hey, we need to be an interplanetary species. That's a great purpose. Then you see people but I think the thing that we have yet to see, other than say the few companies like SpaceX and maybe a few others that have kind of come out as greatness over the past 10 years, is people are less about chasing the purpose of changing the world and its trajectory, like the Apples and the Microsofts, and the more so about chasing the bag. But I do see some people that are truly starting to try to shape the future. And I think we're in this.
But that's my point, Matt. Not to cut you off, but that's my point. There was way more money going into stuff that objectively we can say doesn't matter, like crypto exchanges and JPEGs and all this stuff. I mean, 2021, people were getting money. People were getting $30 million valuations for just an idea about an NFT. I mean, I knew this was trying to raise money at that time. So my point is, that much exuberance, yes, the tulips have happened over again, but now they're happening with trillions of dollars.
But the same thing, I mean, I agree, but I disagree that it's a recent thing. I mean, the same thing happened with all the solar companies in 2008 with Obama. right? And then there's always going to be whenever there's some sort of recession, people aren't really going to turn around and think about it until retrospect really kicks in. And
yeah,
so
also look at the tech bubble. The tech bubble, I remember when you could have had any website and people would have thrown money at you. But guess what? Among all those websites were the Amazons of the world, the Googles of the world, the ones that really made the big changes. So even among the crypto and NFT and all that other stuff, there are definitely use cases out there that we may not necessarily know about that are not prominent right now. We see the trading of the monkeys, and back in the day, the what do you call it? Like just a developing of a website and people saying, oh, you're going to run your business off of a website. In 2002, 2003, people thought that was the stupidest idea and they can't believe they ever invested in that. Then you go 10 years forward, everyone's like, oh my God, I can't believe I missed all the gains that I could have had in tech, where all these, all this money could have been made while actually doing that. So it's one of those fallacies that comes to mind where you have a good idea, it gets taken way too far and overblown, and then you have all these other little people show up and try to copy you and try to do the same thing, and they get a bag, and then they liquidate, they get out, and basically now the industry is left with pieces, but among those pieces is usually a lot of great companies that are going to be able to withstand all of this stuff and end up profiting on the other end. I mean, just remember, even among people that think NFTs are dead and all this other stuff, there are people that pay millions of dollars for a small piece of paper with their favorite sports star on it, the trading cards. There's value in that, right? So what if you could digitize that? I'm not saying that that's like an infinite, definitely going to be a big thing in the future, right? But there's a market for it that people don't necessarily realize. All I'm saying is whenever an industry falls apart, it's always a good idea to look into that industry, whatever players are left, and see if they have the wherewithal to actually innovate and develop a business around it.
I agree with you that there's going to be companies there's probably some NFT companies that'll pan out. There's use cases for it.
Yeah.
But I think you guys have to agree with me that Palantir left because they saw this nonsense happening. Like, we can all admit in 2020, 2021, there was companies that were getting funded that should objectively, that money should have.
That's not why they left, dude. They got chased out of town. I'll be upfront and just tell you guys, they got chased out of town from Silicon Valley. They could not deal with the constant protesting and constant heckling that they were getting because of their affiliation with Peter Thiel and
but no one's heckling the NFT companies. That's my point. Like, if NFT companies aren't getting heckled, but Palantir is.
That's because the NFT companies didn't violate the woke values that area tends to expunge. My point.
So we agree. That's why they left.
Palantir didn't fall in line with the Googles and the Facebooks of the world.
Mm-hmm. And that's my point. Google and Facebook are monetizing attention. They are doing pretty much nothing that's truly valuable at the end of the day. Right?
Yeah, we're communicating on a product.
I get it, and YouTube is valuable, but in terms of life or death, right? This is philosophically valuable. We get to express ourselves, but Google's almost getting replaced with ChatGPT. What I'm saying? What is the real? If Facebook goes away tomorrow, what we go to a different app? You know what I mean? It's just, if Palantir can't help the NHS tomorrow, shit's not, people die, right? If we take it to its logical extreme.
I think you're.
I'm not even trying to fanboy. I'm just trying to make the argument.
No, I'm not saying a fanboy. I'm just saying you're undercutting the amount of the level of connectivity that's been developed and the ability to even have conversations and actually interact with people that you don't necessarily give a lot of credence. So like Twitter, had it not been for Twitter and YouTube and all these other things, these are consumer companies that monetize attention, right? You're just the words that you said. But because of those things, you're able to make a living. We're able to communicate on Twitter.
I get it. I'm bullish on that, but then you have to have Elon had to buy it because Twitter was censoring people. You know what I'm saying? This is the type of stuff I think Palantir wanted to leave. It's not that I hate Twitter.
But also, I mean, I think one of the reasons why I think this is a prime example as to why Palantir left Silicon Valley. Look how much hate Elon got when he bought Twitter.
Yeah.
Right. Because he wasn't necessarily going to fall in line with the wokeisms, like Chris was saying, and the Googles and the Facebooks that are just saying whatever we can do to uphold, and silence and free speech is, to an extent, and be part of the shadow government. Right. To be honest, I don't like that. Right. That's part of the
Twitter files were horrible. It was absolutely horrible what we saw was going on.
Yeah. So I think that's part of the reason why Palantir left.
Yeah.
Silicon
And
Valley.
the thing that Karp can't say out loud is because we didn't want to fall in line with the wokies. So he has to make it a little bit more presentable, right? In a way that's not insulting them for their stupidity. That's what he did. He said, "Oh, well, our values didn't align with the ones in Silicon Valley, and because we wanted to innovate in a different way, X, Y, and Z," all this stuff that he said. That's what he said. But if you could take the filter off of Karp and just ask him, give him a blunt midway cannabis. Hey, Karp, why'd you guys leave Silicon Valley? Man, these fucking wokes, man. Just trying to get a contract, and every time I get a contract, they're like, "You hate Mexicans, so I fuck Palantir." Like, this is exactly what's happening with the NHS, man. So they made a unilateral decision. Look, we're not trying to have everyday protesters show up at our doors, trying to get us, and also it's a hassle to the employees too. Like, imagine being an employee, you walk in the door and people are surrounding it with like fucking protesters saying, like, "Oh my God, you're helping kill blah blah blah, you're helping do this, you're doing that." So no, you got to get away from that nonsense.
A lot of Palantir's problems are very political. The NHS problem is political. The Silicon Valley aspect of it is very political. I think it's going to continue to be political because it's a very polarizing organization. You're helping nations. Some people want to help certain nations. Some people are just saying, maybe we should just be America and only focus on America, right? You're always going to have that polarization. And when you start tapping into some of these things where normal business as usual gets impacted, you're impacting the 200 to 250 million people. 200 to 250 people that are billionaires in this world that are actually the ones that are in control, that are used to the way that things are. And a company is actually putting that at risk and challenging that. And that's why I think you're really starting to see people put their elbows out when it comes to a company like Palantir.
Yeah, play this clip real quick, Amit. So this was in 2017 when
Behind me, you see a group of protesters who are protesting against Palantir out of fear that they might build a Muslim registry. We're going to go talk to them about why they're here. What brings you out here today?
We're here to raise awareness about Palantir, a Silicon Valley tech startup right here in Palo Alto that works as a government contractor for federal agencies like the Department of Homeland Security. It's come out recently through court documents and leaks that Palantir is building data tools for immigration enforcement. Today we're pointing out two tools, one called AFI and one called Falcon. These tools look a lot like a Muslim registry already, and they could be being used for workplace raid style mass deportations. So we want to raise awareness in the Silicon Valley community that these are tech workers just like us that are doing this.
People over profit. People over profit.
So the thing is that Alex Karp from Palantir has actually come out last week in Forbes and said he would not build a Muslim registry. There's still a lot of people who seem to be concerned about that. Why is that?
It's not that we're looking for some sort of promise and then we'll be satisfied. It's that we demand systems of that are publicized. Where
she can't even explain. Do you see this?
Keep itself in check.
Tech workers unite! Tech workers resist! Tech workers unite!
It seems like it's we always hear of protests against tech or tech companies, but it's very rare that we hear of tech workers themselves actually protesting technology. And you yourself are with a tech company, you're with Facebook. What brought you out here today to actually protest?
Well, I want to point out that I'm here on my own. So
I'm not trying to get fired.
That's right.
Because I think the tech community needs to hold itself accountable. We have these values we espouse very publicly and very loudly about tech being a force for good in the world. So when we feel that tech is maybe not a force for good in the world, it's important that we're out here as well, holding ourselves accountable.
Look at the idiot in the back, deport billionaires. Did you see that?
I didn't see that. Okay, so I want to say something about this. So give me like 2 minutes. I got something. This was a really good video. It triggered something in me. So Netflix just made a new documentary on Pornhub. Okay, I watched it last night. It caught my attention. It was thumbnail was interesting. I clicked on it.
Wait, you watched Pornhub or you watched?
No, I watched the Netflix documentary on Pornhub. Okay,
and then you went and searched for Pornhub.
No. I watched the Netflix documentary.
He thought he was getting involved, and then he was like, I guess I'll watch the documentary.
Well, I usually don't watch anything on Netflix. Now, I don't watch Netflix. I'm a YouTube guy, but I
typed in Pornhub, and basically the Netflix documentary came like, let me investigate.
Yeah.
No, anyway,
the viewers need to know about this.
They went to they did an hour 30 minutes really breaking down content moderation. Okay. And obviously Pornhub has to deal with a ton of stuff. All adult film websites have to do this. Now, what this uncovered when I did my due diligence is I started typing in content moderation. The
due diligence.
The real due diligence here. Okay. Do you guys know how much the content moderation industry is worth? The industry is defined as companies that have to hire people to moderate content. It's 13 billion. It's growing 10% every single year. Facebook contracts 15,000 people across the world to do content moderation. These are people, if you type in the secret life of a Facebook moderator, you'll find the article on Google. These are people that have to sit through 200 to 7,000 posts a day. And they have to literally, I'm not joking about this, literally, they interviewed one of these people. They have to watch people getting stabbed repeatedly, begging for their life and continuing to get stabbed. They have to watch sexual harassment at very high levels. They have to watch the most disgusting, vile stuff hundreds of times a day because Facebook's AI is still not as advanced enough. It gets rid of 95% of posts, but then you need the humans to review the rest of it. And they have to watch that stuff to remove it. Guess how much these guys are paid?
Probably minimum wage, if not less.
$15 and maybe less than that an hour based on your state. These people are making $28,800 a year. The average income for a Facebook tech employee, that guy that works in Facebook tech that you showed in this video, is $240,000. So this is where the hypocrisy comes in. You've got this guy making $250,000, probably working 10 to 20 hours a week. I'm not trying to diminish his job. I know tech is hard, but we've seen the day in the life videos, right? A lot of these people aren't doing anything. Why aren't you speaking up over the people in Phoenix, Arizona that are making barely minimum wage and have to see people getting killed every single day, to the point where Facebook had to pay $52 million in court to settle a mental health and PTSD civil case because the workers were like, you need to pay for our therapy classes because we are literally seeing people get killed every day and we have to moderate this stuff.
Jesus.
This is the type of hypocrisy that exists in tech. They are protesting an organization that's just following what half of America voted for, which was stricter legal immigrations. They're not leaving America. You know, as Karp said, we're not going to just be political. We're going to do what the administration says because we are American first and foremost. But they're not protesting their own company that isn't willing to pay a decent salary for people that have to go through and witness some of the most horrific things every day. And I think that's the culture that ultimately, you know, Karp wanted.
I mean, it's the same thing with Apple, right? Look at Apple. I was watching a documentary, and I was not watching a Pornhub documentary. I was watching a documentary about China's labor practices, like with Apple. Apple, like, literally looks the other way. Like, they're literally using Uyghur slave labor camps in some of their factories, where literally you're imprisoned and you're told, like, okay, you got to go to this factory and work. And basically, they build our iPhones. Right? Yet, when you look at Apple, it's like, oh, we're woke. We're super woke. It's like the woke thing, I feel like, is overcompensation for all the shit that they actually do in the background. Like, they know that they are 100%. Actually driving wedges in society, causing chaos, but
they don't give a shit. Every company just wants to make money. That's it. I mean, we know this, right? That's it.
I mean, the same thing with a lot of these rare earth metal mining companies. We're like, look, we're saving the world by providing you these metals, but then you actually go to the countries where these things are being mined and the conditions are absolutely horrendous for a lot of these people.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at this clip. We didn't get to do Palantir Weekly last week because Matt was busy and his agents weren't responding, but this is an interesting clip that I want to react to. This is the head of BP. What is this guy? This
Uncle
is
Bob.
This is Uncle Bob, CEO of
Great
BP.
guy.
Okay, here we go.
Smart
Matt,
guy.
for some reason, you know him. Here we go.
And then we said, okay, let's try something new. We have a giant field in Oman that we've discovered and we want to build it out. And what you would have done is you would have gotten engineers, put it all in a grid, and you had a plan to drill all the wells, and it'll be just like this, the flow lines and the facilities. And you said, one of your team said, we might be able to do that better for you. Let's start with the first well. What does it look like? What's the subsurface look like? What are the temperatures, the pressures? And you put that in the model we thought we had. Every single well was different. So there's a giant gas field in Oman that's built out like capillaries in the human body. It was done half the time, much more efficient, great investment, and they helped us with that. So then suddenly I was faced in the company with everybody wanted to use Palantir. because it was demand pull, and so we had to prioritize it. But I have to say, revolutionized BP. And then we said, okay.
Any thoughts on the CEO of BP basically saying that they had no choice but to use Palantir?
It provides validation that the software works. Plain and simple. You want validation? You got the CEO of BP. Was that CEO, Matt? I don't know. You said you knew him.
Ex-CEO. Yeah.
Ex-CEO. Basically, that's crazy. If you have someone at that level saying your product works, this is not vaporware. That's it.
Yeah, I can't speak on the Oman project because I personally have never worked to Oman, but Gulf of Mexico, same sort of thing, right? I mean, you're talking about something that looks like an octopus, right? It's tied out, lines going everywhere. These facilities process 100 to 200,000 barrels a day. And here you have, anywhere between 10 to 30, 40 wells being tied back to it. Each of them has their own pressure sensors, temperature sensors. You have flow lines that tie, sometimes 30 miles back to a different facility. I mean, think about the last time you drove 30 miles and how far that is. Sometimes one well has to travel all that distance just to tie back to a facility, and how much monitoring that might need to make sure that it doesn't, wax up, have a bunch of particulates deposited in the flow line, how much water is being produced through it, like all those different things that you need to keep track of, and how easily, if you're doing it by paper or through Excel or through any of these other means, just like Dudley was talking about in that interview, how difficult that starts to become. And really having an effective system like Foundry truly helps you. So just like he saw benefit in Oman, I've seen it personally in Gulf of Mexico, and love using Foundry every single day.
There was a question. Why did JP Morgan drop Palantir? I'll tell you, I'll summarize it very quickly. There was a network security officer who basically was in charge of monitoring network security. He used Palantir software and services and engineers to basically build a tracking system that was tracking senior executives, like their locations and all this other stuff. And so the executives at JP Morgan got scared, saying, wait a second, what the hell you mean that you're tracking us like this? So one nefarious actor within their
why
own
was he trying to track them? What was the point?
That's the point. I don't know. Like, these are the kinds of things that happen when you have a very powerful tool like Palantir in the wrong hands. It could actually be it could be a dangerous tool.
It can take over the story and the narrative that you want to have within the organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you have to put guardrails around it. And also there's also a fine line between providing contracted services and also knowing when to step away. So here's an example. If, let's say, a senior executive at the company who's in charge of the contract tells you to do something that's unethical because it would mean that the company benefits or he benefits personally, what is the engineer and the sales rep supposed to do? Are they supposed to keep that person happy, or are they supposed to say no? Now, here's the thing. That unethical ask has to be taken seriously, because you could lose the contract over that, but also at the same time, you could gain respect by the company for outing that person, right? It's a very hard thing to do. I've been asked in the past to do something, and I've put my hands up and says, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it. Like, that's just like, oh, that's not going to look well on your report, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. No problem. Put whatever you want. I'm okay. Give me, I would rather take a bad review than to do something unethical that ends up biting me in the butt 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Sleep better at night doing it.
Okay. I think that's it for us. I don't think there's any other crazy news this week.
There's the Department of Defense that had a contract that was like 90 some million. It wasn't too big.
Yeah. Anything you want to say on that? 99 million for 5 years?
It wasn't too crazy. It was just a continuation of the previous contract, it looked like. And I saw something maybe about the Department of Energy, but I don't know how that came to fruition. But one thing that I thought was pretty interesting, it was like either Friday last week, which I was going to bring up if we did do this, or maybe it was Saturday. I don't remember. But it was basically like a risk and ethics and governance contract with FCB or FGB something of Europe, which I thought was pretty interesting, because Silicon Valley happened the day before, and here you have a company that's helping. I think it was like focused around financial risks and stuff of the like. So I thought it was pretty interesting that deal got announced the day after everything with SVB happened.
Yeah, that was an interesting deal. There was no monetary thing there, but it was kind of one of those like, hey, this is a perfect time to throw in the fact that we are actually stopping financial institutions from doing bad stuff because we give them the data so they know when things are bad.
This is one of those things that definitely would be awesome for Palantir to get into, which is literally banks have to send you their data. That data is super secure. It's going to go to a super secure location, and the Fed can monitor you all the time in real time. And basically, if you mess up on your safeguards, the Fed will come and shut your ass down way before. See, here's the thing. On one side, you need data privacy because you can't let your competitors know the deal terms that you're making, right? And that's where Palantir is super good. Like, they're able to take all the data, keep it anonymous, keep it segregated, and also at the same time be able to present it in a very secure way. So as an example, like the COVID, right? When COVID happened, all these hospitals were gathering data, but you see, like, there were no data breaches. You didn't hear about, oh, such and such hospital has this many COVID patients, and this is the person that had COVID. This is not the person that had COVID, blah, 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 blah. All that stuff was segregated. So only the detailed information was presented to Palantir, and then Palantir was able to take that and put it to the national level without violating any privacy laws. So that's the key that Palantir has. Now, do me a favor, show that thing right there for the JP Morgan. So this was the article. If you guys want to read it, it's on CNBC, but JP Morgan had to oust their security chief, who backed by Palantir after executive found out that he was spying on them. But basically the guy was like tracking, they were like tracking executives and stuff. So this guy right here, Peter, collected emails, browser histories, GPS locations from company phones, as well as transcripts of recorded conversations. And basically, I don't know what the exact use case he had for it was, but yeah, the guy was like literally spying on their own executives. So that's why that's why leadership at JP Morgan said, this is too dangerous for us. We got to get these guys out.
But I liked where you're going with that, Amit and Chris. I think, or maybe it was you, Chris, that said, almost send in your data to the FOMC to be like, hey, are you guys kind of like, I have to do production forecasting to what I think our oil facilities are going to produce based off of when we're going to do work on the facility, what the wells make, is the pressure declining, so the well rate's going to go down. It's like, why aren't banks doing the same? Maybe they do. I mean, I'm just not familiar with it, but forecasting where they think that they're going to continue to buy into, and the FOMC can use that to say, hey, our models show that we're going to go up to 7% terminal rate, and who's going to be left, swimming naked, right? And the tide's going to come out, and who's going to be left, dried up on the beach because they're dried out in the sun.
Imagine they figure that, and that would have saved the bank from collapsing.
Yeah. Like, it wouldn't have saved him, but what would have happened was the minute that data could have helped decision making at the Fed say, hey, wait a second, we've got unprotected, uncovered banks right now that are vulnerable to our rate rises. If we raise the rates too fast, these are the banks that are going to fail. So that's where you can go to the bank and say, look, your liquidity is not ready right now. You need to make the structural changes now rather than prioritizing your short-term profits. Prioritize long-term survival, because this is where we're headed into from a regulatory standpoint. They could have crafted regulatory requirements prior to all of this stuff happening. That's the key, right? The more data you have, the better off you can be. Like, that's what I love about oil and natural gas. Oil and natural gas provides so much data. It's almost near real-time data. And Matt can probably tell you, go to some of these websites, they could tell you how much production per well, where it is, where location, and it's all public data, right? There's no like, oh my God, you can't know what this is.
Yeah, we turned down projects and we're like, within a month or two, we're like, oh, what did we do? We should have bought, or oh no, we're glad we didn't buy into it because it's turning out like shit. Like, you can find that out within a month's time. Our stuff we could find out within 5 minutes.
Oil and natural gas would be a great example of how technically speaking banks should be running. Also, like the same things that you worry about when it comes to the banks are also the same concerns that oil and natural gas has. So as an example, you had a bunch of E&P companies they were producing all-time highs, they were making record profits, but instead of reinvesting some of those record profits into buying up hedges, if oil prices came down like really fast, they didn't do that. So now they're paying the cost, right? So now guess what? All the oil that you were selling at $100 a barrel is now selling for 70. So you got a 30% depreciation. But there are some companies that were super smart about it. And they're like, no, you know what? Prices are all-time high in natural gas and oil. I'm going to go out there and hedge and make sure that I have enough in the market so that just in case oil prices or natural gas prices collapse, I can, make stay afloat and stay solvent, right? And stay up to all my debt covenants and everything else. I would say banks should really take a page out of oil and natural gas when it comes to a lot of these things, and work in the same way where you have a lot more real-time data that's being pushed to the Federal Reserve, and then let the Federal Reserve at the same time craft regulatory policies around it so that this way you're not running into systemic issues.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's and that FCG deal they made. I mean, that's an incredible explanation of how the Fed could have actually seen that happening. But that would also mean the Fed would have to have Palantir implemented within their systems, right?
Yeah, but I mean, there's already multiple organizations within the federal government that do it.
Do it.
So that's what they do the stress tests on, right? I mean,
yeah,
it could really help out with the stress tests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also, and like I said, this is the same federated data platform that could be tailored towards the banks that was used during COVID. Because COVID is very. Yep. Look at how rapidly they were able to deploy Palantir during COVID, right?
Bro, I think during COVID, Karp had a moment of realization where he probably was in his house in New Hampshire or something. He was like, "Holy shit! If we actually pull this off, the next couple of years, like we will be able to say," which I think is also the thing he said with Ukraine. He's like, "If we actually do this right." Like all the shit we're taking politically, no one's going to be able to deny that we saved people's lives because we distributed the vaccine and we did it in a way that protected data.
I think the vaccine is a separate thing, and I think a lot of people are
not to get into the politics of the vaccine, but you get my point, right?
But the Ukraine thing, bro, piece de la resistance in terms of PR, man. Like right now, anytime anyone goes against Palantir, you could just say they're Russian disinformation, and they would have to prove that they're not. Yeah. Like Foxglove right now. Foxglove is Russian disinformation built to destroy the UK's health system. Who's gonna prove it otherwise?
Bro, that's such a good argument. That's like no matter what they say, we're like, oh, so you support Russia invading Ukraine.
Yeah, that's what everyone like right now. If you say anything, people just say, well, like DeSantis right now said, oh, maybe we shouldn't help the Ukrainians as much. And people are tearing his ass apart from both the Democrats and the Republican side, saying, no, this is the hill we're both willing to die on. So I would say Karp needs to do the same thing. Karp needs to just push the Ukraine thing more, man. Just be like, look, when no one else wanted to stand up, where were they? Where was Google? Where was Microsoft? Where's Facebook? They're not there. Palantir's there. So
I think it's the beginning of a very long line of great things that the company is truly showing their purpose and their willingness to let the West win. Right. I mean,
let me ask you.
Palantir, Afghanistan, Ukraine. I mean, it's continuing to be really good.
Based on the Ukraine thing, Matt, you can go first on this. You just said, where was Google? Where was Meta? Do we think over the next 10 years, Palantir has an ability to actually grow and compound greater than Google and Meta? I'm not talking about the stock price. I'm talking about literally just become a bigger company. Or do we think Google and Meta are still so big, they still have so much because they're consumer plays, that like we're saying Palantir solving the hardest shit in the world, COVID, Ukraine. Do we really think there's going to be so many more hard things that the proverb is like the harder things that you solve, the more you get rewarded? That's not actually the proverb, but like that's the point, right? Do we think solving harder problems over the next decade is going to put them at a point where they can get bigger than those companies, or are those companies way too big because they have consumers as their market and not enterprises?
I think what we'll realize is Foundry is just the beginning for a lot of these organizations. And I think what we'll realize is once we get companies on Foundry, then we'll start to truly understand and address the real problems that are in organizations. Right now, a lot of it is just inability to make the right decisions at the right time because of the ineffective use of data. Now that companies will have that, then you could truly start getting into where does AI come in? Where does Apollo come in? Where does all these other opportunities and other products come? And the thing that's brilliant about Palantir is they're not trying to create some one size fits all software that you can just plug in and work off of. They're trying to create a custom made software. So they're willing to sit. And so I think Foundry is just the beginning of the runway. And I think that there's going to be a whole plethora of runways that really start to take off from just from my personal experience, what I've already started to see, and then coupled with, I believe, other companies. So I think that we're yet to see the end. And I don't think that, in terms of total size, I don't see within 10 years them maybe being as big as Google is today. That's $1 trillion organization. But in terms of growth rate, I'd say probably faster growth rate in terms of size, just based off of the fact that Palantir is coming from a much smaller base than Google is. And Google is kind of getting to a place where even a 5% growth rate, 10% growth rate is still on $50 to $100 billion a year. And the last thing I want to note, it's a completely unrelated topic, but still related to Palantir. Just looked at the the SkyKit white paper, and they have little backpacks that you can use now, which I thought was pretty badass. I don't know if you guys saw that or not.
I saw that.
Back to you guys.
Yeah. By the way, what do you guys think of Chicken Genius buying? I don't know. He bought a fuck ton of shares.
About $300K worth of Palantir. Yeah.
I don't know what he sees in it but he was right on Tesla. I gotta
talking about Palantir back in April 2021, so he's always known about them.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think he knows that. I've seen like a very brief explanation of him talk about it. And he's like data analytics. I think he honestly followed Kathy Wood into it, which a lot of us did. I get it, but he flip flops a lot, so I wouldn't be surprised if he just sells it.
I will say though, if you see 2 more quarters of EPS positive results, I think you're going to start seeing a lot of fanboys really start to come over. We have a great community already, right?
There's some more YouTube channels that are starting that are just like.
But you do see a lot of people that are skeptical, right? And I think Tesla was at a very similar place in 2016, 2017. And I think if we have a couple more quarters of profitability, people will really start to be like, oh shit, especially now that we're getting the treasuries and stuff. I think that'll help out.
Yeah, they have 1.5 billion in treasuries. It's not bad either.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for us. Thank you all for joining here. 222 people means the world. Chris, Matt on YouTube and Twitter. Thank you all for being here, and we'll be here next week on Palantir Weekly. That's it.
See you.
Thank you, everybody. See you next week.
Here.